Step into the enchanting yet eerie world of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, where the sweet allure of chocolate and whimsical landscapes mask the hauntingly tragic stories of the cast who brought this beloved classic to life. While the film has captivated audiences for generations, the real-life fates of its main actors were far from the magical endings seen on screen. Instead of a happily ever after, many of them endured heartbreaking struggles, devastating losses, and, in some cases, met untimely and tragic ends. From mysterious accidents to incurable illnesses, the stars who once captured our imaginations faced dark and harrowing destinies that few ever knew about. Join us as we peel back the curtain on the hidden tragedies behind Willy Wonka's whimsical world, revealing the sorrow and misfortune that shadowed these talented actors' lives. Their stories, cut short by fate, will leave you stunned, and perhaps even chilled to the bone. Gene Wilder was born in 1933, a man whose comedic brilliance masked a life filled with sorrow and loss. As Willy Wonka, he created an unforgettable character, charming yet unpredictable, kind yet unsettling. His performance became legendary, but behind the scenes, his personal life was a labyrinth of heartbreak. Born as Jerome Silberman, he grew up in Milwaukee under the shadow of his mother's chronic illness, an experience that first led him to comedy as a means to make her smile. His first marriage to Mary Mercier ended in divorce, and his second, to Mary Joan Schutz, collapsed under the weight of emotional distance and personal struggles. His most tragic love story was with Saturday Night Live star Gilda Radner. Their relationship was passionate and full of love, but their happiness was cruelly shattered when Radner was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Wilder watched helplessly as the woman he adored wasted away, her suffering magnified by medical misdiagnosis and failed treatments. When she died in 1989, he was inconsolable, retreating from the world that had once adored him. Though he eventually remarried, the wounds never fully healed. In his later years, Alzheimer's disease crept in like a thief in the night, slowly stealing away his memories, his wit, and his very sense of self. By the time he passed in 2016, the man who had once painted the world with laughter and imagination was left drifting in a haze of forgotten dreams, his final days marked by a heartbreaking quietude that contrasted so cruelly with the vibrant life he had once led. Jack Albertson was born in 1907, a gifted character actor whose warmth made Grandpa Joe one of the most beloved figures in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But while the film painted Grandpa Joe as an exuberant dreamer, Albertson's own life was far more somber. Raised in Massachusetts in a family that struggled financially, he found solace in the world of vaudeville before transitioning to film and television. His career was illustrious, earning him an Academy Award and multiple Emmy nominations. But behind the scenes, his personal life remained largely private, shrouded in quiet melancholy. A devoted family man, he loved his wife, Wallace Thompson, and their daughter, Maura, but the pressures of Hollywood often kept him away from home. In his later years, a devastating diagnosis of colorectal cancer cast a dark shadow over his life. Knowing his time was running out, he chose to keep his illness a secret from the public, continuing to work despite his body's betrayal. The once energetic performer found himself in agonizing pain, yet he refused to let the world see his suffering. He died in 1981, his final days spent in a heartbreaking struggle against a disease that stripped him of his vitality. Though his legacy remained strong, the world never truly understood the quiet sorrow of a man who dedicated his life to bringing joy to others while carrying the weight of his own silent pain. Gunter Meisner, born in 1926, stepped into the sinister role of Mr. Slugworth, the ever-watchful rival chocolatier in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971. With his piercing eyes and an unsettling presence, he instilled fear in young viewers, embodying the perfect corporate villain. But beyond the screen, Meisner's life was steeped in complexity and darkness of a different kind. He built a career on playing authoritarian figures, often cast as Adolf Hitler, a role he would embody multiple times, as if fate had shackled him to the weight of history's most despised figure. Though he found success in film and television, his personal life was far from golden. Struggling to balance his work with his relationships, he remained an enigmatic, often distant figure. His marriage and family life were shrouded in secrecy, suggesting a loneliness he never openly admitted. In 1994, he suffered a sudden and fatal heart attack, collapsing in a moment that gave him no time for goodbyes. He was gone in an instant, his name soon swallowed by the passage of time, remembered only in echoes of his most chilling performances. Ursula Reit, born in 1914, brought to life the gluttonous and overindulgent Mrs. Gluck, the mother of Augustus, in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971. Behind the scenes, however, her own life was one marked by solitude and heartache. A German actress with a career spanning both television and film, she found only fleeting moments of recognition, often typecast in minor maternal roles. Her personal life was equally unremarkable, yet deeply sorrowful. She endured long years of loneliness after the passing of her husband, whose name remains lost to time. The absence of children left her without family in her final years, her once warm home growing colder with each passing season. She passed away in 1998 at the age of 84, slipping away quietly, largely forgotten by the industry that had once given her a taste of the spotlight. The circumstances of her death remain obscure, a silent farewell befitting a woman whose joys had been so fleeting. Diana Soul, born in 1930, portrayed the gentle and loving Mrs. Bucket, Charlie's weary but hopeful mother, in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971. Her performance radiated warmth, yet her real life was filled with long struggles and quiet disappointments. Unlike her on-screen character, who fought for a better future for her son, Diana battled years of professional obscurity. The majority of her career was spent waiting for roles, for recognition, for a moment to shine beyond the shadow of Willy Wonka's whimsical world. While she was married, little is known about her personal relationships, perhaps reflecting a private life tinged with its own sadness. Despite her gentle presence, she remained largely unseen in Hollywood's eyes. She died in 2018, at the age of 88, slipping away into the quiet unknown. Though her passing was peaceful, it was a melancholy farewell, a reminder that some stars, no matter how bright, are destined to fade into the past, remembered only in glimpses of nostalgia. Leonard Stone was born in 1923, a dedicated actor whose commanding presence brought Mr. Beauregard, the brash and opportunistic father of Violet, to life in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. His career spanned decades, with roles in countless television shows and films, yet true stardom always seemed just out of reach. Born in Oregon, he served in the Navy during World War II before pursuing acting, a passion that carried him across the world. Though he married and had children, the sacrifices required by Hollywood weighed heavily on his relationships. As the years passed, he found himself relegated to guest appearances, his once thriving career fading into obscurity. By the time he was diagnosed with cancer in his late 80s, he had long since stepped away from the spotlight. In 2011, he succumbed to the disease, dying quietly just one day before his 88th birthday. His passing barely made headlines, a cruel irony for a man who had spent his life striving to leave a lasting impact. The world moved on quickly, yet those who had known him and admired his work felt the sting of his absence, a reminder of how easily Hollywood forgets those who once helped build its magic. Denise Nickerson was born in 1957, a bright-eyed child star who captured the world's attention as the gum-chewing, self-absorbed Violet Beauregard in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. With her undeniable charm and talent, Hollywood seemed to promise her a dazzling future. But the magic of the silver screen rarely lasts, and her life took a much darker turn. After her early success, she struggled to transition into adult roles, eventually walking away from acting entirely. The years that followed were filled with pain. Personal tragedies haunted her, and Hollywood forgot her. Her marriage ended in heartbreak, and in 2018, the devastating loss of her only son left her shattered. The following year, a massive stroke stole what little joy remained in her life, leaving her trapped in a failing body. In her final days, her health rapidly deteriorated as she suffered multiple seizures and pneumonia. Knowing there was no way back, her family made the painful decision to cease life support. She passed away in 2019 at just 62, her once vibrant spirit extinguished far too soon. The world had cheered for the bold, fearless Violet, but Denise's real-life story was one of quiet suffering, a lonely fight against the weight of loss and regret. Nora Denny was born in 1927, a gifted character actress who brought a comedic flair to the role of Mrs. TV, the exasperated mother of the television-obsessed Mike in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Though she played her part with a light-hearted touch, her own life was not always so joyful. Born Dolores Teachner, she carved out a respectable career in Hollywood, appearing in films like Splash and Trick or Treat, yet true fame always eluded her. She juggled motherhood and acting, but the industry's demands often pulled her away from family life, creating a distance that could never quite be bridged. As the years passed, her career slowed, and she faded from the public eye. The once lively performer spent her later years in relative obscurity, far from the magic of Hollywood. In 2005, she succumbed to cancer, her final days marked by a quiet retreat from the world she had once lit up with laughter. Though she left behind a legacy of humor and warmth, her passing was largely unnoticed by the industry she had dedicated her life to, a bittersweet ending for a woman who had given so much yet received so little in return. Peter Capel, born in 1912, played the mysterious tinker in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, his cryptic warnings setting the stage for the film's eerie undertones. Yet his real life held its own shadows. A German actor who had survived the horrors of World War II, he carried the weight of history on his shoulders, having lived through the darkest chapters of the 20th century. His career spanned decades, from European films to Hollywood productions, but he was never a household name, always lingering on the fringes, just out of reach of true stardom. Little is known about his family, his loves, or his losses, suggesting a life marked by solitude, a man who gave his soul to cinema but received little in return. When he passed away in 1986, his death was barely noticed, a quiet end for a man who had once spoken the film's most foreboding words. Nobody ever goes in, and nobody ever comes out. In the end, it was he who faded into the unknown, his final days left unspoken, his legacy reduced to a single, haunting line. Roy Kinnear was born in 1934, a man whose comedic timing and affable presence made him a beloved character actor. As Mr. Salt in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, he portrayed the indulgent, weary father of the spoiled Veruca, a role that perfectly showcased his talent for exasperated humor. But off-screen, life was far less amusing. Kinnear grew up in England, raised in a family of entertainers, yet his own journey was marked by struggles. Though he found success in British cinema and television, his personal life was not without turmoil. Despite his dedication to his family, the demands of his career often kept him away from home, a source of great sorrow. Tragedy struck in 1988 when he was filming The Return of the Musketeers in Spain. In a moment of miscalculation, he fell from a horse, suffering catastrophic internal injuries. Rushed to a hospital, he underwent emergency surgery, but complications arose, and his heart gave out the next day. His death at just 54 was not only sudden but agonizingly preventable, leaving behind a devastated wife and children. The shock of losing him so needlessly haunted those closest to him, and his absence left a gaping hole in the industry he had given so much to. Peter Ostrom was born in 1957, a bright-eyed boy who, at just 12 years old, was plucked from obscurity to play the role of a lifetime. Charlie Bucket in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971. He was the embodiment of innocence, a child whose biggest dream was simply to live a better life with his beloved Grandpa Joe. But behind the dazzling world of golden tickets and chocolate waterfalls, reality told a different story. Hollywood came calling, but Peter turned away, never appearing in another film. The promise of fame could have led him down a very different road, but instead, he chose to retreat into anonymity, pursuing a career as a veterinarian. While the world may see this as an act of independence, one cannot help but sense the sorrow in his departure from acting. Was it a choice, or was it an escape? Was the industry too cruel for a child, or did he fear becoming another forgotten star, discarded by Hollywood after his youthful charm faded? His decision left a bittersweet legacy. He remains the ultimate one-hit wonder, the boy who could have been so much more but chose to fade into a life of quiet solitude. Though he is still alive, his story remains a haunting what-if, a tale of talent abandoned, leaving behind only the memories of a single, magical performance that the world refuses to forget. Julie Dawn Cole was born in 1957, a child who would forever be known as the bratty, demanding Veruca Salt in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971. With her perfectly curled hair and entitled sneer, she played the character with chilling precision, making audiences despise and adore her in equal measure. But for Julie, the role became a lifelong shadow, a defining moment she could never escape. Unlike some of her co-stars, she continued acting, appearing in British television series such as In Mother Makes 3, 1971 to 1973, and Angels, 1975 to 1978. Yet, no matter how many roles she played, she was always Veruca Salt. The little girl who once screamed, "I want it now," would find that life did not always deliver on such demands. Her personal life was far from the picture-perfect privilege of her on-screen persona. She endured heartbreak, a difficult divorce, and the struggles of raising her children as a single mother. The glitz of her early career faded, replaced with the struggles of everyday survival, forcing her to reinvent herself. She turned to psychotherapy, perhaps as a way to heal others while quietly mending the wounds of her own past. Though she still engages with fans and embraces the legacy of Willy Wonka, one cannot ignore the melancholic undertone in her reflections. Was her greatest role a blessing or a curse? She is still alive, but forever bound to a character whose infamous tantrums overshadow the woman she became. The golden ticket she once held brought her fame, but also a lifetime of longing for something more, something the world was never quite willing to give. How do you feel about the passing of the actors from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Who do you miss the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our latest videos.